Hey, folks, good evening, and thanks so much for taking some time out tonight to join us. We're here with Leeds Beckett University in the United Kingdom to talk a little bit about studying law in the UK. So I'm joined by several Leeds Beckett experts who will take the show away. We'll do a little bit of Q&A later on, and just to assuage any concerns, yes, the session's recorded, and we'll share the recording with anybody who registered. So, yeah, jump in, use the Q&A feature to drop any questions in the chat, and we'll take them up a little later in the show. Otherwise, thanks again for your time, and Ashley, take it away.
Thanks, Logan. Yeah, hi everyone. Evening to those on the East Coast, afternoon to those on the West Coast. My name's Ashley, and I'm joined here today with a couple of my colleagues, and we are going to talk to you all about the LLB Senior Status programme that we have on offer here at Leeds Beckett University. So I will just share my screen with you all. I do hope that you can see it. If anyone could just let me know if there's any problems with viewing the screen before I get started, but hopefully you can all see it okay.
Yeah, looks good to my eye.
Perfect, great. So I guess we'll start with introductions first, tell you a bit about ourselves. The aim of the presentation will be to run through an introduction of what we do here. I'll talk about Leeds as a city, if you've never heard of it before. We'll tell you a bit about Leeds Beckett University and some background information about us as an institution. We'll hand over to Dr. Steve Wood. He'll talk you through the LLB Senior Status Programme and how that's structured and what that will look like over the 2 years that you'll be studying here. And my colleague Aaron will take over after Steve, and he'll finish off the presentation telling you all about the Canadian community, accommodation, all of the kind of things that you'll need to know in addition to your studies here. So to start off, my name's Ashley. I am the regional manager here. I cover student recruitment for both North America and Europe. I've been here just short of 3 years. I think it's about 2.5 years. My job is to manage the recruitment team and oversee all of our recruitment that we do in North America. I'll pass over to Aaron next.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. And hi, everyone. My name's Aaron Taylor, and my job title is International Development Officer, which essentially means that I support a lot of our international students, especially Canadians, coming over to the UK. I've been working in this role for about 7 years now, so I've seen pretty much everything, and I can answer pretty much the majority of your questions. So look forward to getting to the session today. Pass on to Steve now.
Thanks, Aaron. Hello, everybody. My name's Dr. Steve Wood. I've worked for Leeds Beckett for around 24 years in the law school, and I'm a principal lecturer and course director for international relations within the law school.
Thanks, Steve. So I'll start on telling you about Leeds. Some students have never heard of Leeds before, and that's perfectly normal. We don't expect you to have ever heard of Leeds as a city, especially if you've never been to the UK before. So if you haven't been to Leeds or the UK before, we are situated in the north of England. So we're between London and Edinburgh. Probably about 3 hours journey away from London. We are an hour away from Manchester, a couple of hours away from Liverpool, and about 4 hours away from Scotland. So unlike Canada, the UK is much smaller, it's much more condensed, it's a lot easier to get around. That's actually one of the key points and reasons why international students will come and study, specifically in the UK, because you can get a lot of travel done out with your studies, and we're not that far from Europe as well. So We've got Leeds Bradford International Airport, which connects to the majority of Europe. And then an hour away, we have Manchester Airport. So if you're flying in from Canada, you're more than likely to land in Manchester Airport. So very well connected, easy to get around. Public transport's very easily accessible around the city too. Leeds itself, we have about 5 universities in total. It's very much a student city, Leeds. So right now we're in the peak of the academic year. So if you're walking through Leeds City, there's hundreds of students everywhere, a lot of student socialising going on, nights out, student events, lots to get involved in the city. So you're not, it's not an experience that will certainly exclude you from being able to meet other friends, whether that be friends based in Leeds or international students as well. And it has been voted the best place to live in the north of England. It's been voted several times friendliest city in the UK as well. It's very much known for that warm Yorkshire feeling. You know, if you come to study here, you're welcomed. It's a nice, friendly place to live. So a bit about us as a university. So we date all the way back to 1824. So we've been going for a long time now. And we have about students from over 164 different countries that come and study with us. And Aaron will tell you a bit more about our Canadian student community. But out with that, we recruit a lot of students from Southeast Asia, South Asia, India, for example, Europe, US, and then of course we have our home students based in the UK. So a lot of cultures across the university. We're awarded 5 stars for facilities, employability, environmental impact, inclusiveness, and global engagement. We're also top 10 campus for facilities as well. We're well known for our academic partnerships, which extend across 15 different countries. Many of our students have access to these partnerships while studying here. We provide career support up to 5 years after you graduate. So even as an international student, we'll keep in touch with you if you need any support in terms of employability. You know, we're always interested in hearing what our alumni are doing once they graduate as well. And so we're proud to say that we maintain and do our best to maintain that relationship with you and still continue to give you that support after you've finished your studies. So we have a 1.43 billion impact on the UK economy each year. Again, we'll go into more detail about what that looks like, especially from the law school perspective. But, you know, especially being based in Leeds, we have several businesses and the UK's largest legal hub in Leeds as well. And we're ranked in the top 30 English universities for student satisfaction. And many of our students will go off to either study or do further study or graduate to then work in their preferred workplace, obviously relative to their studies. And we have up to 90% students that go off and do that. So we have a really high success rate here. So a bit about each of our campuses. So we have 2 campuses. We have one based in the city. And then we also have one which is based in Headingley, which I'll go through in the next slide. So if you're studying law, you will be based in our city centre campus. So as it suggests, it's in the heart of Leeds City. It's a 15-minute walk away from Leeds train station. You're on the doorstep of hundreds of businesses, as I mentioned there, organisations that offer work placements and employment opportunities to students as well. And then we have our Leeds Business School, Leeds Art School, and then, as I mentioned, our law school, which are all based in the city. So I suppose with that in mind, it's very much a city environment that you'll get. But I suppose the difference is when international students think about coming to study in the UK, they immediately think of London. Understandably, it's the capital. But with London comes higher living costs, higher tuition fees, and it has its place. It's an exciting city. I love going down to London and visiting it, but it's a very different environment to what Leeds offers. Leeds is very much a city in the sense that you're surrounded by hundreds of people. There's lots to do around the city, but it maybe doesn't come with the same costs as a more expensive city across the UK. And we're about 10 minutes away from the countryside as well. So it's a really nice balance. And it's, yeah, you really get the best of both worlds when you're studying in Leeds. The campus buildings give you access to industry standard facilities and flexible study spaces, and we have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week library and on-site gym that you have.
Ashley, you're on
Ashley,
mute.
thanks.
Sorry, I must have pressed the mute button. So I don't know where you got up to there. I was just starting on Headingley campus. So Headingley campus is our second campus. It's based about 15 minutes journey on the bus away from the city. So again, it's not that far away. If you're studying law, you're probably not going to be at Headingley campus as often, but you'll see here, it's set in 94 acres of green. It's very picturesque. It has a vibrant student village, which is a short walk away. There's a 15-minute bus journey to and from the city centre. If you are playing a sport, so if you're interested in playing sports here, it's very much where you would be based. It's where all of our sports are based, or sport courses. And if you're playing a sport here, that's where you would be based, is up at Headingley campus. So if you are playing a sport, if you want to play something, whether it be club level or competitive level, we also offer that as an option. So we have our Carnegie School of Sport Teaching and Research building, which is just on the picture on the bottom of the slide there. And we have all of our sports facilities, which includes pitches, swimming. We have an inside pool, inside and outside tennis courts, and an outdoor running track as well. Our events, our hospitality, tourism, and computing courses are also based at Headingley campus. So just a bit about our Leeds Law School. So we are based in one of the UK's largest legal hubs. So you may or may not have heard of some of the organisations or law firms such as Pinsent Masons, DLA Piper. They're all based within the hub, and our students have access to that, obviously studying in Leeds. So with that in mind, just some stats here, 90% of our students on the LLB honours course, which is our undergraduate course, and 90% of our students on the LLB honours course with criminology were positive about teaching on their course, and that was based on a national student survey in 2024 this year. So we actually just recently opened a new building for our law school in June, I think it was, this year. So that has opened up new facilities within the law school, such as a mock courtroom that you have access to as a law student. There's the Harvard Lecture Theatre, and we have lots of learning spaces across the building. And there's a huge array of career development opportunities within the law school. So you'll have access to networking events, career fairs. These are attended by local and international organisations, placements, and a professional mentoring scheme. So we'll team you up with someone who obviously comes from a legal background, who's experienced in that area, and they can give you career advice on studies, anything that you might need support with while you're studying your law degree. We also offer students free access to over 200 legal textbooks, saving money, which is a huge plus, especially as a student. I definitely remember when I was a student and how expensive it was just to get access to all of the textbooks that you need, especially in law, as it's very reading heavy. So you have access to that completely free of charge as a student. We also ensure that our law school gives back to the community. So you can volunteer with our partner Charity Support through court, offering free legal advice to people going through the court system again. So I suppose not only are you giving back to the community, but you're also building your practical experience while you're studying as well. So in terms of costs, as a university, we're probably offering one of the most competitive costs for our law programme. So for next year's intake, it will be
Sorry, Ashley,
13,000.
you may have just missed a slide. I think there was a previous one, just a bit more about the
Sorry.
2 year.
Every time I go back, it mutes me, and I think that's what's causing me to miss slides.
The green one, yeah.
That was that one. Sorry about that. Oh, it's took me back to the beginning. Yeah. So what is the senior status LLB? So that is essentially the title of our programme here at Leeds Beckett. So it's otherwise known as from yourself as the 2-year graduate LLB. So what that means is it allows graduates to achieve their LLB over 2 years versus the typical 3-year route, which means it's a more condensed law degree, but it essentially allows you to fast track achieving your LLB, allowing you to then choose whichever route you want to go down in a much quicker route. So most Canadian students will go back to Canada and they'll do their NCA exams and they'll continue their law career that way, but it's still a much quicker route, as you'll probably already know, than doing the 3-year route. So just a few common questions that were asked. So do I need the LNAT to study law at Leeds Beckett? The answer to that is no, you don't. And you also don't need the LSAT either. There's no prerequisite examinations that you need to do in order to qualify or be considered for the programme. Aaron will go into more detail later on just about the application process and what that looks like and what you'll need to provide, but you don't need to do the LNAT or the LSAT. There's also no interview stage as well. I'm sure you'll be happy to know. I'm sure not many people, including myself, like to be interviewed. So there's no interview stage. We are looking at your personal statement and your transcripts again that Aaron will go into more detail about. So for entry requirements, we would typically look for a bachelor's degree from a Canadian university of 2.5 or above. We can be flexible. So for example, if you get a 2.4, don't panic. We'll look at your application holistically and we'll look at everything that you've submitted with your application, including any work experience that you have as well. And just to add on the NCA examinations, I'm sure many of you have done some research on this, but if you are doing a 2-year LLB, and you achieve a 2.2, which is a second class honours degree in the UK or higher, that would be the equivalent of 50% average here, or the equivalent of a 60% average in Canada, with no marks below 45%. You will, in most cases, need to take 7 examinations. So that would be 5 mandatory exams, plus 2 additional exams which are assigned by the NCA, plus you'll have to do the module Canadian Legal Research and Writing. That is the standard of what you would be expected to do after you graduate. However, I would always recommend that students get in touch with the NCA before you decide to choose which one of the programmes you want to study in the UK, just to make sure that you are being vigilant and making sure that you know exactly what will be expected of you when you do return to Canada. So as I mentioned before, the annual cost for our programme is £13,000. This year, for next year's intake, we're offering a generous scholarship of £4,000 for Canadian applicants. There's no application required for the scholarship. So as long as you receive an offer for the course, you'll be automatically granted the scholarship. So it's a huge saving on your costs straight away, bringing that fee down to £13,000. These are just some examples of what the living costs are from UKVI. So we would typically tell students to budget about £12,000 per year if you're living and studying in Leeds and just in general in the UK, which is probably much cheaper than many other cities across the world, to be honest. So these are average costs, obviously depending on your budget and your preference of accommodation, but typically you would pay £758 per month. For food, roughly about £120, and for other living costs like phone bills, anything like that, would be £145. Aaron will talk about accommodation later and the bills included within that and how that's broken down, but it's usually all inclusive in what you get with your overall rent. And then all you really need to be thinking about is, socialising if you want to do any travelling and things like that. But £12,000 would be the minimum that we would recommend. So I'll pass over to Steve next, and Steve is going to run through the programme with you and what the 2 years will look like and how they will be structured.
Hello, everybody. Right, okay, then this is your first year of your senior status, and we start off with a Law Institutions and Skills non-credit 2-week module, and that's just to get you into familiarising yourself with studying law and researching law. So that's kind of a skills-based 2 weeks to get you going. And then the core modules, which we call them foundation modules, which you find on any law degree in the UK, is public law, tort, contract, and criminal law. So those are the modules you'll be doing over year 1. For year 2, it's a little bit more exciting because in year 2 we start to get some electives involved in the course. So still have some core modules because for the purpose of LLB in the UK, we normally make sure that you study the 7 foundation courses. And the reason why we do that is because should you want the option of going on to do the bar course, that means if you wanted to be a barrister in the UK, they have a requirement that you have the 7 foundation modules. So anything that's, you might say, core in this program is one of those foundation modules to ensure that should you choose that route, then you're going to be able to get access to do the bar, subject to having a 2-1 actually on completion of the LLB. And you can see there are a number of electives that you can choose, and in the next slide we'll just go through some examples of those options. So these are some examples of electives in the final year of the senior status. There are more, and it's the modules are really about the resources we have in the given year. So there might be 1 or 2 don't run, but some that will, more or less most of them will run. And Canadian students are supposed to be very interesting things like vocational type modules, and so the law clinic is very popular with that type of request. And we have a different building actually that deals with the law clinic, so it's a bit like I guess I would call it a bit of a Charles Dickens house. It's in a bit of a, it looks a bit of an ancient house. I think it was built in probably about 1800, the house, and so it gets that feel of you might say an old law office. So that's where the law clinic happens, as you might say. So you can see there is a number of different electives for those that are wanting or interested in studying a particular type of law. In terms of the delivery, we've got blended learning, so we've got some that's recorded and we have some face-to-face. We have a recorded lecture every week, and we have, I guess the main thing what we have is the seminar. So the lecture is that you get the information, and of course, as I'm sure you'll be familiar with, seminars where we examine your understanding of that subject. We also have a weekly lecture, but the lecture tends not to focus solely on the subject, but we actually look at the skills as well in achieving or being successful. So we'll spend a week on, say, for example, how to write exams or how to draft assignments or other things. So, reading a case note or something of that nature. So it's very much a skills-based lecture as opposed to just a course subject lecture, although we do cover the subject as well in some of them. We have drop-in sessions, so we pride ourselves on student support. So you can either wait behind the workshop for the lecturer and ask them questions there, or you can arrange to meet them either in a drop-in session, or you could even ask for a Teams meeting. So we like to be accessible to students, and that's one of the things that we do pride ourselves on, student support. Assessments, there's a range of different types of assessments. On-campus examinations. We don't have a lot of exams, to be honest. I think that's faded as the times has progressed. We do have some exams or some MCQ exams actually, because if you wanted to go on to be a solicitor in the UK, the new assessment regime of that professional course is moved to MCQs or best answer. So we incorporate some MCQs into the module, so you'd be familiar with that type of process if you wanted to be a solicitor in the UK. So we have 2 points of assessment. We have assessments in January and again in May. And occasionally a module might have two assessments, but generally that's the main assessment point. It's 12-week session, 12-week semester followed by assessments. You can see their practical work. And we've got a Canadian student here I met last week, and you can see she's got a statement there. I'll just let you read that rather than me read it. So she's very happy, as I would say. She's very pleased to coming over. She loves Leeds. She says it's fantastic. She's very happy here, and so she's a good ambassador, as you might say, to support what we do at the law school.
Yeah, if anyone wants to read Joelsa's blog, there's a QR code on the right-hand side there. So if you've got your phone on you, you can go on and have a look. And Joelsa talks all about why she chose Leeds Beckett, what she's learned so far in her course, and what she's enjoyed so far about it. So it's worth having a read, because Joelsa's also from Canada, so it's always nice to just hear from another Canadian student's perspective.
Is this me still, Ashley?
Still you, Steve? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. I mean, as Ashley mentioned, that we have got a new law school. We've moved into that building recently, and so all the facilities are quite shiny, bright, and new, which is really good. So we have mock courtrooms. We've got rooms that are designated just for students for their learning. We have this what we call an Harvard lecture theatre, which is just the way that the lecture theatre is set out. It's only actually quite small, that, and only holds about 50 people, but it's an interesting, you might say, piece of space with some high-tech kit, as you might say. We do have all sorts of different activities that you can get involved with. Support through court works with our students, able to provide support for members of the public, helping them navigate and engage in the court system, but that's also done through the law clinic, where you get into groups and you have a real live client, and what you're doing there is preparing a letter of advice. That's what happened. But of course, you're always supervised by a qualified lawyer who will review your letter and sometimes and often redraft it a little bit. So it's so you might say that you get to look at what you really should be sending out to them. We have volunteering programs, mentor schemes, and employability support. And here we are of the new, you might say, facilities. And as I said, they are new. And it's actually a great space. I mean, as I've said, I've been there 24 years. I've been in the city, different parts of the city, in different buildings. I've been at Headingley campus, the law school was up there for 3 or 4 years. But I have to say that these new facilities are perhaps one of the better schools, or would I say, environments that we are now in. I think the only difference is the between now and what was is that you don't really have an office anymore. It's often we do a hot desking because the way the environment's changed quite a lot. So you often will have lecturers sat there day on day in an office. It doesn't happen now, but they are there when you're being taught, and they are available on that day, and you can see them face to face every week.
And it's just we'll pass over to Aaron now.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks, Steve. So if anyone is interested in applying to the course, there are actually two ways that you can apply. You can make us one of your five options on the UCAS system. So if anyone isn't sure what UCAS is, it's the UK application system that a lot of students use, and it's got all the UK universities on there. So you can make us one of those five ones, or if you're just interested in Leeds Beckett only and you just want to apply to us, you can make a direct application on our website. In both options, these are the things that we mainly recommend that you have to hand. If you don't already, then I recommend getting those together over the next couple of months or so. So one of the main things that do take a while are things like academic certificates, diplomas, and transcripts. They may be in a different language. If you studied in Quebec, for example, it might be in French or anything like that. So as long as those are in English, they're very clear scans. It's got the full GPA list on there. We can see what grade you got for each subject, that type of thing. And as long as it's one of the official ones from the university that you went to in Canada or elsewhere around the world, usually with some sort of signature at the bottom as well from the registry team from that particular university. So that's one of the main ones. The second one, and this probably again does take a little bit of time for you to just gather some ideas around, which is what we call, it's got a couple of names really. We call it a personal statement here in the UK. You might have heard the term motivational letter before. Essentially, it's around about 400 to 500 words of you describing your experience and you trying to sell yourself as a potential student as well. So why do you think that the university should accept you as a student? So in here, what I always like to recommend is you'd include research around the program, try and get across in that letter your passion for the subject and what you want to do in the future with your career and how this degree is going to help you achieve those goals. Secondly, any types of work experience, make sure you've got those included in there as well. And then anything like any sort of extracurricular things, like if you are interested in sports, if you're the team captain, if you lead the debating team at your college or president of any sort of societies, then I highly recommend including those and any sort of voluntary experience in there too, particularly if it's to do with the legal field. So that's the second one. And then finally, we do require at least one reference from someone else. And that can either be an academic reference, so that's someone from your university, or that can be a professional reference, so it can be someone that you work with. It just can't be your mum or your dad or your brother or your sister, unfortunately. As much as they're going to say nice things about you, it does need to be someone that's going to be completely independent from you directly. And then I actually did mention it earlier, but our grade requirements for the program are a 2.5 GPA or higher. That is on a 4.0 scale. If you would like us to convert us to the 4.3 scale or 9.0, just let us know what you have, and then we can. That's what I do. If you send me a copy of your transcripts, I can help you just understand the system a little bit better. If you want to head over to the website as well, it's a bit more. There's a bit more information for Canadian students on there too. Thanks, Ashley. So yeah, moving on to accommodation or housing, it's probably one of the biggest sort of talked about topics. You're traveling miles to maybe it's a country that you've never visited before, and that's absolutely fine. Um, and you ideally want to pick something that you know is going to be is going to be safe, is going to be affordable. So what we like to do is we like to have multiple options for our international students. So currently there's around about 8 or 9 different options, I think it is, across the 2 campuses. However, we have the majority of those are based around the city centre, so that would be very, very close to where your classes are. Maximum 15-minute walk, so you don't have to travel too far. All of them are, you don't really need to take public transport for most of them, to be honest. A lot of them are just within walking distance, because Leeds is such a small city centre. We do guarantee that accommodation to international students. Obviously, the more popular ones do go quicker than the less popular ones. So if there's one that you do have in mind, we recommend just applying for that as soon as possible. As soon as you receive an offer to study from a university, then you can apply for your accommodation option. So as soon as you've got that offer, you can head over to the accommodation website, get it booked in. You don't need to pay a deposit until I think it's the first week before you arrive, and that's only £200. And then what we do if you're going for the on-campus housing options are there are three different installments in terms of payments, and that's very clearly communicated to you, so you can budget accordingly and you know exactly what money is going to come out and when. Um, so that's for the on-campus accommodation options. If you didn't want to go for the on-campus option, and some people don't, then you can go for private ones, and those are ones that are through third-party companies, through third-party landlords. That does require a lot more organization from yourself, and probably a little bit more research. And I would say there are plenty of websites out there to make sure that you're selecting the right area, and the right option. But if you wanted any help with that, we do have teams on board. And if there's any areas that you want me to recommend at all, I can do that for you too. But what I like to do is get you matched up with fellow Canadian students very early on, and other students on the program. And what they like to do, especially if you're going for the on-campus accommodation option, with that system, you'll get allocated a room if it's a shared. Usually everyone has their own bedroom, and then it might be in a shared flat of around 5 or 6 different people typically, and you can see who else is going to be in that sharing that room with you. So you can see age, you can have preferences based on whether you like partying, whether you prefer a quiet night in, smoking, non-smoking, if you want just girls, that kind of thing. So you can actually see those, and you can alter those and change them as and when you need to. Equally, like if you arrived and you wanted to change, then there are teams on site that can help you change as well if you weren't too happy. So don't worry too much about that. Like I was saying, they're all within easy traveling distance of the campus. All have free Wi-Fi. That price that you pay, those three different installments, there's no hidden cost there. So you don't. That's all the bills included. Free Wi-Fi. They have laundry facilities on campus. It's usually £1, £2, something like that. So it's all included really. I guess the only thing to sort of mention is that the meals aren't included, so you just budget a little bit of money for that, roughly about 50, £100 a week or something like that is what I say usually. But I'm sure you're probably well versed in cooking up some student meals, ramen, noodles, that kind of thing as well. So you'll have a kitchen which you can share with other people to be able to do that. You do have in terms of the safety that I was talking about, you do have residential officers that are on site for your welfare and pastoral care. There are various room options. So you can have single rooms, you can have studio rooms, which is everything to yourself. You can go for shared bathrooms or private bathrooms. But what we like to do is connect you with people very early on through Facebook pages and that kind of thing too. And just moving on from that, really. So we have a lot of I get very heavily involved with this is just making sure that you have as much information as possible, really, when you do make the move over to the UK. We've got a great team called the Global Village, and we've got some staff members whose job it is literally to make sure that your orientation goes as smoothly as possible, and your introduction to life in the UK. So even months before you even start the program, I'll have a lot of online sessions to get to know the course team, get to know other Canadian students, other international students. The Global Village team organises a lot of events on campus. They'll help you when it comes to enrolling as well, and setting up a bank account in the UK, that type of thing. So we make sure you subscribe to those types of things because they're really, really useful. And like I say, we just like to make you prepared as much as possible. Living on campus is a great way to make friends. Like I was saying, I'd recommend sharing with people just because it is quite a fun way to meet people. But also getting involved in a lot of things like becoming a global ambassador. So like some of the students in the pictures there, they're global ambassadors, and what they do is they help the international team like myself and Ashley out with campus visits from whether it's like government ambassadors come to the campus. We have overseas partners come to the campus. We require student ambassadors to help us with the tours and just to give that student personal experience. So you can get paid for that, and that's what we call an ambassador. So we have specific international ones. So that's also I know some global ambassadors that have made friends for life through that program. I'd highly recommend getting involved in that, especially in your first couple of weeks. We have fitness. We have gyms on both of our campuses, so they're not too far away. I think it's literally about £10 a month, so really cheap. And like I was talking about, I like to connect a lot of Canadian students together to begin with. So we've got a couple. We've got about 10 starting in January on the health programs that I've connected all together already through WhatsApp groups. I've met them in person as well, but they range from Toronto. Some of them are from Vancouver, some from Calgary. So all over Canada really, but everyone's coming together, and then you have that thing in common that you are Canadian, and everyone's clicked straight away, and then they've developed their own individual groups, and they're arranging private housing together now. So that just goes to show that it's worth getting involved in those things early on. And then once you're actually on campus, there's tons of things to do. So obviously, first and foremost is your priority is going to be your studies, but then there's lots of other things around studies as well. So we have, I think it's about 350 to 400 different clubs and societies that you can get involved in. If you don't find one on the list, create it. And you'll find that some other people might have similar interests too. So we have sports clubs and communities. As you can see there, we've got film. They do Harry Potter. They have Quidditch games in front of the James Graham building, which is that sort of that old style looking, a little bit Hogwarts-esque building in the picture there. Religious societies, professional societies such as debating, things like gaming, but also recently this year we've developed a North American community. So that is both US and Canadian students come together. They organize their own socials. So, for example, in a couple of weeks' time, we're hosting a US Thanksgiving dinner. So everyone's invited to that, and that's going to be a great way for all of the incoming US students, incoming North American students this September to meet each other. So just little things like that, really, just to help you out in terms of meeting fellow Canadians. And Steve touched on it previously, but we really pride ourselves on providing that support too. So we always say, don't ever, if anything does come up throughout your time here, I guess the first and most important thing is that every student is allocated a personal tutor, like an academic advisor, which a lot of prospective students when I speak to out in Canada, they're quite surprised about that because often when you go to colleges and universities in the US and around Canada, that's not really heard of. You kind of leave the class and then that's it. But as Steve's mentioned it in the past, Steve hangs around after the classes, and that's when he has lots of conversations with students about their personal life. How they getting on, how they finding their accommodation, whether they're budgeting. I'm not saying approach Steve directly about budgeting, but it's just that kind of thing. Everyone's always there just to lend a helping hand. So everyone gets allocated one of those personal tutors, and then they hold sort of open door policies every week or so just to come in and speak to them about anything. But then also as a side of that, we do have lots of different teams that specialize in money advice. We have expert professional qualified counselors in terms of student well-being, so you can book appointments with those, and those are completely done in confidence and completely it doesn't go on your record or anything like that. Those are literally there just for your well-being. I mentioned about those residential officers, religious sort of support, disability support. We've got a great library team that help you when it comes to making your way around the different library facilities. We have a student advice hub. We've also got a students' union, and that is kind of like a group of students that are elected each year. They represent all of the clubs and societies, but also if you have an idea to have like more recycling bins on campus or something like that, for example, you can campaign to the SU to have that in place, and then they're there for the student voice basically. So there's all these little things that just to let you know that you know your voice is always going to be heard as a student. Just to finish off there, the counselling I sort of mentioned, bereavement, and then those academic advisors too. And I think that is it from us. Those are the social media links down the bottom there. I'd highly recommend checking out those. There's the LBU Global Village one as well, but we'll share the slides afterwards, and so you've got the direct links. And myself, Ashley, and Steve's email addresses were on the very first slide. So if you want to reach out to anything that we've talked about, want us to explain anything or go into more detail about any of those, feel free to get in touch with us. I'll pass back over to you, Ashley.
Thanks, Aaron. I think that's the end of the presentation. So I'll stop sharing. So you should be able to see us again. And I guess now we can open it up to questions with the help of Logan. And if you have any questions, you can post them on the Q&A option, I think, Logan. I'm sure I see a Q&A tab there for students to post any questions they have.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have some questions from folks who registered, and sort of here's what I would love to hear about. But that said, we've got quite a few questions from Ayana, who has, I guess, very specific inquiries about doing a master's of human rights law. She's a British and Canadian student. Very specific questions. So I guess before we kind of get into the weeds, what would be the best way for somebody who is got some of these detailed questions to hammer them out?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, Logan, because there's and thank you so much, Ayana, as well, for your questions. But I'd be very happy to jump on to do a video call or something like if you want to go into more detail with those questions. Like we can maybe touch on some of them, but if there are those detailed specific questions, I'd be very happy just to reach out to me. I can put my email address. Well, you'll get my email address, but I'll hop on a call and maybe go into more detail about those.
Yeah, I do feel like I appreciate the questions, but some of this will be sort of out of scope, I think. A couple are kind of general and are some that we have heard from other registrants as well. And it's the most basic sort of fundamental, which is practicing in Canada. What sort of hoops would I need to jump through, if any?
Logan, does that mean when they come back to Canada or applying to the UK? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I guess I should have specified. It's a lot of people are wondering about studying in the UK, graduating from Leeds Beckett, and then returning to practice law here in Canada.
So just as we mentioned in the presentation, I appreciate there's a lot of information there, so it can get a bit confusing. So you will be required to complete your NCA examinations. It will be 5 allocated to you by NCA, and then a further 2. And then in addition to that, you'll have an online module that you'll have to complete as well. That is usually the standard route that you would have to take, and that is on the basis that you complete your degree with us, and we class our grades as first class, second class, which would be a 2-2. So that would be the equivalent of 60% in a Canadian bachelor's degree. And so long as you achieve that, and your degree that you get here at Leeds Beckett, those are the examinations that you'll have to complete. And then thereafter that, you can then pursue whichever route that you want to go down. Hopefully that answers the question for you.
Appreciate that. Thanks very much. Great. We've got a couple others. Can you speak a little bit about the difference between an LLB in the UK versus a JD?
Well, I mean, the JD is I think that the modules are slightly different in a JD, and there's quite a bit of vocational assessments in a JD where it's not particularly necessary in an LLB. The LLB is designed to I guess the normal route would be to go on to practice. Well, it's the start, as you might say, because you've got to do a professional course after you've done the LLB. So you have to do an LPC, or not anymore. It's a different course now, or the bar course. So the LLB is designed for that professional route. JD is slightly different, although even with an LLB, you can go do the bar course in America. So I think you'd have to do a conversion. It gets you in there, as you might say, but there are differences. But ultimately, obviously, the JD is designed for the American bar, and the LLB is designed for practicing in the UK. But of course, there is you might say, the ability to move from one to the other with a few conversion modules, as Ashley has pointed out.
Appreciate that. Okay, thanks. This one's a little bit more quotidian, perhaps, but working part-time while studying law in the UK, are there any sort of visa restrictions, and or is it considered to be not great practice because you're typically very busy with actual schoolwork?
Well,
Do you want to answer, Aaron, or will I answer? I don't mind. Yeah, so
Sure.
with your visa, there are slight restrictions on your visa, so you can work up to 20 hours per week on a student visa. So it's not frowned upon. Most of our international students will work part-time. Of course, it helps to fund your studies essentially, especially while you're living over here. So yeah, just the short answer to your question is yes, you can work, but up until 20 hours per week would be the maximum.
Gotcha, thanks. We have a similar thing for international students coming into Canada. 20 hours a week is kind of the standard cap. How about the application timeline? When should folks start preparing if they want, I guess it's November now, they want to start next year. When is preparation season begin?
Not really a deadline as such, if I'm honest. If you're thinking about applying for next year, so if you want to come and study from September onwards, we normally advise applying as early as possible. Just for your own peace of mind to, organize your travels, organize where you want to live. But if you're submitting an application, what's slightly different to the US and Canada is we offer conditional and unconditional offers. So what that means is if you apply and you're still in the process of finishing your undergraduate degree, you've not quite finalised your grades yet, you can send an application now and we'll offer a conditional offer, which essentially keeps your place on the basis that you meet the requirements once you finish your degree. So to answer the question, you can really apply at any time. I mean, sometimes we get applications as late as July, August. However, I wouldn't recommend that just because it can put you under pressure. It's not that we wouldn't accept your application. It just puts yourself under a lot of pressure. And especially when you're traveling across the world to go and live somewhere else, you really want to give yourself the best possible chance of success for that to be a smooth transition. So I would start thinking and considering your options now. And then maybe we normally start to get applications typically round about towards the end of the year, but they really start to pick up January onwards. So there's no real set deadline. That we offer that flexibility there, especially for international students who are still considering their options. So you can really apply at any time.
Thanks for clarifying that. We have just a few more minutes. If anybody has other questions, please do drop them in the Q&A panel. We've got one from Daniel here that's kind of interesting. What would you say is the average or even more sort of unique career paths that folks, take coming out of the program?
I think everybody who goes on to do or starts a law program normally starts with the idea of going on to be a lawyer, but I think often that does change. Not everybody, certainly not everybody on our LLB wants to be a lawyer, but I think what you find is that people that do do law degrees, whether it's JD or LLB, find it a very useful degree. It's a very good degree to go into business with or do other things. So it gives you quite a particular way of thinking. So, you know, I would, you know, it's various, you might say, career pathways, and of course, some people go on to further study and going on to do PhDs following their law degrees. I'm doing master's programs as well.
All right, beauty. I guess, oh, let's see. Oh yeah, just a link to the program page from Aaron. That's great. So yeah, we just have a couple more minutes. If anyone has any last minute questions, please do drop them in the chat. Otherwise, do you folks have any parting words of wisdom before we let you go?
No, just a thank you to you, Logan, and your colleagues, and just all the students that have came along today and took their time out of their day to come and watch our presentation. And as Aaron said, if you want to get in touch with us afterwards, it doesn't end here. You can get in touch with us via Logan or in touch with us through the information that we've included on our presentation, which we'll share with Logan afterwards. And I think Logan's going to share the presentation slides out with you. We're a friendly team. Steve is also available as well for anyone who just wants to have a one-to-one. If you have more questions after today, please do get in touch with us. We'll be happy to talk to you.
Thanks very much for your time as well. From myself and Wisp here, thanks for taking some time. We'll see you again. Have a nice evening.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.